Hello, friends. Welcome back. Hour number 2 of the Matt Murphy Radio Show continues right now, or starts, I should say. It is 7 minutes after the hour. Thank you for being around on this Wednesday edition, September 17 edition. We're on a lot of different platforms. You can find us on 99.7 FM. You can also find us on Spotify and TuneIn and iHeart. We're on Talk TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Rumble. Wherever you might be, give us the old thumbs up, the like, subscribe, and all of that, and it helps us out tremendously. We appreciate you. 615-737-9986 is the telephone number, 615-737-9986. If you desire to be a part of the show, you are invited, and that is the way to communicate with the broadcast. You can also hit us up on the super text line, same telephone number, 615-737-9986. Dave says, hey, Ken, is there a Kirk event at MTSU tonight? I don't know about MTSU, and I don't know if Ken knows, but I do know that there is one going on tonight. There's a prayer vigil happening tonight in Nashville at Centennial Park. It says by the Band Shell. That's the big shell that, yeah, I know where that is. It's over there by the ship. There's the bow of the ship or the front of the ship. And then there's a Band Shell over there. Yeah. Centennial Park by the Band Shell, 6 p.m. this evening, Wednesday, September 17th. That announcement was made on social media platforms earlier today. So people all over America are gathering to remember and to pray. It is an event that's happening all over the community, and it's happening tonight in Nashville. And there was also one in Mount Juliet that was this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. And I'll get to that as soon as I get over. As soon as I can find it again, I'll get to give you the details on that. But there's one in Mount Juliet happening this weekend, and I can't get to the space to click because the stupid thing. No, I don't want this notification. Why are you giving? I don't want to clear the notification. I don't understand laptop. Sometimes technology is difficult, and sometimes it makes me want to throw something across a room. Why are you not giving me just X out of that? Thank you.
I'm sure there's classes at the senior center that'll help you.
You might be working there by the time I get over there. You never know. Thank you, Ken. 615-737-9986. Yes, there's a Charlie Kirk vigil tonight at MTSU. And there were 600 people at the event last night in Lewisburg. That's good news. Obviously, there's a lot of folks getting back to church, a lot of folks wanting to pray. And you know what I did not see a lot of? Didn't see a lot of rioting, didn't see a lot of looting, didn't see a lot of anger, didn't see a lot. I mean, I saw a lot of praying. I saw a lot of prayer vigils. I know that there's been a lot of anger, but that anger has been channeled into positive ways to get with like-minded people and to try to do what is necessary to claw our nation back. We talked in the first hour about the desire to outthink the truth when it comes to what actually happened in this situation. I'll continue discussing that. I have seen no evidence. There are rumors going around on social media platforms that the FBI knew in advance of this. I've seen no evidence that that's the case. I've seen no evidence to suggest, and frankly, I'd be open to some of this evidence when it comes to the text messages, because when we saw these last night, when these were first reported, and we read some of these text message exchanges between the suspected shooter and his boyfriend, they seemed stilted and forced, and maybe they were just talking that way. Maybe they just seemed that way to us because we know the aftermath of everything that's come from then until now. I don't, some last night said, these are made up. Well, made up by whom? And I saw someone in the super text line made the comment, I distrust the government until proven otherwise. Oh, I mean, I guess I understand that sentiment. Do we not trust Trump's government more so than perhaps Biden's government, or we just don't trust? Look, you're talking to a radio show and you're talking to a radio host that has publicly declared that we will never rebuild the trust in the FBI until you dismantle it and rebuild it with a different name and rebuild it with a different mission statement than the one that got corrupted so awfully over the last 40 to 50 years. So I get it. I fully understand it. But I also trust this FBI a hell of a lot more than I would trust to Joe Biden's. And I don't understand why this FBI would lie about the text messages. Now, whether or not someone else coordinated with the shooter, whether or not someone else had foreknowledge of what was going on, I believe that. As vocal as this individual was in the aftermath of this shooting, I don't believe for a moment that he was not vocal beforehand. And so we'll find out together exactly who knew what and when. Walnut Grove, 7:30 on the campus of MTSU is what I'm now being told. So 7:30 tonight, MTSU campus. Obviously, MTSU, Middle Tennessee State University, one of the campuses, campi? Multiple campuses, campi?
No, it's campuses.
I think I'm going with campi because I want to. There were multiple campi across the state of Tennessee. That feels better. That feels so much better than campuses. Campuses sounds silly. Don't be silly, Jackson. Come on. ETSU was one, UT Knoxville was one, and MTSU was another where professors, for whatever reason, felt the desire to publicly celebrate the death of another human being, and they have been summarily dismissed of their duties. Having this misguided thought is one thing. Verbalizing it and publicly declaring it and thinking that you are immune from any sort of responsibility or consequence to your action, that's another piece of weirdness that I will never understand. Why in the world would you think that your freedom to freely express yourself would come free of consequences? Makes no sense to me whatsoever. But there we are. All right, so many on the political left have decided that they want to create some sort of equalization regarding how these things have been happening. Last night we heard about this, but I absolutely love Neera Tanden and what she had to say on the Abby Phillips show last evening on CNN. You know what I say about hashtag never CNN? It's a garbage network full of garbage people spewing garbage. Don't watch CNN. I watch CNN so you don't have to. With that in mind, CNN last evening, Abby Phillips talking to individuals about the equivalency of right-wing and left-wing attacks. Hold on.
Not a conservative. I know not everybody at this table is a conservative. But Charlie Kirk was murdered because he talked about God, family, country. Those are views that people like Scott and I hold dearly. If Charlie Kirk, a private citizen, can be targeted for those views, it makes us all feel like we have a target on our back. So it's easy for people who have constant security, who are in high places and don't think they're ever going to be targeted, to speak like this. But to the average conservative like myself, this is a scary time because one of our own was taken out. And I think what people have to realize about left-wing violence is it's not some made-up fantasy. There are 3 court cases going on today for assassinations. Luigi Mangione, Ryan Ruth, and Tyler Robinson. What do all 3 have in common?
I mean,
there
are lots of political trials for violence.
They're all left-wing.
Yes,
hold
but
on,
there's
hold on a
also,
second.
obviously, we went through, I mean, look, I actually think this whole debate of there's right wing, there's left wing. We should all say, I don't know why it's so complicated to say political violence of any kind is wrong.
Of course.
But we have obviously had massive levels of political violence on the right. There's actually a Department of Justice actually suppressed an article about it.
Yeah, there's a DOJ deleted a study showing that domestic terrorists are most often right wing. And here's what that study said. Since 1990, far right extremists have committed far more ideologically motivated homicides than far left or radical Islamist extremists, including 227 events that took more than 520 lives.
You know what they also do? You notice that since 1990, they're saying 227 events that took more than 520 lives. Have you noted 520 lives since 1990? So if you want to know how ridiculous the study that Abby Phillips was citing there, they did not include 9/11. 9/11 happened in 2001. She's saying since 1990, far-right extremists have committed far more ideologically motivated homicides than far-left or radical Islamic extremists, pardon me, including 227 events that took more than 520 lives. There were almost 3,000 lives taken on 9/11. Why are you dismissing 9/11? Why does 9/11 not count? Secondarily, it's my understanding that the study, and I've not read the full study, It's my understanding that this study automatically assumes that Timothy McVeigh was far right. Timothy McVeigh was anti-government. Anti-government does not necessarily equate to far-right extremism. And I misidentified Breonna Lyman, and I apologize. It was Breonna Lyman that was talking there, not Neera Tanden. Neera Tanden responded to her, and I apologize to her for that. Now, the one that Breonna Lyman did miss was this individual in Minnesota. Authorities in Minnesota have identified the man that was responsible for the attack that killed one state lawmaker and left another one wounded, and had a hit list of 45 elected officials as Vance Bolter, Boelter, 57, apprehended Sunday night. And this was an article that was written on June 16th of this year. Obviously, we all heard the story. The story was set aside in the aftermath of it because it was pretty cut and dry that this guy was a nut job that had decided to do a political hit job. Now, nut job does not absolve him of right-wing or left-wing extremism, and so I went to try to figure out if he was right-wing, left-wing, or what. Vance Bolter was apparently, quote-unquote, religious, at least in as much as he had targeted or had as a target on his list abortion clinics. He was apprehended in the aftermath of a major search. The suspect went to the home of 4 Minnesota state lawmakers, quote, with the intent to kill them, end quote. He said Bolter was disguised as a police officer, drove a black SUV with emergency lights turned on, had a license plate that said police, carried a 9mm handgun, wore a black tactical vest, was disguised in a silicone mask. You remember the image, perhaps, of that disguise. Very creepy looking, bald. The investigator in the case, the Joe Thompson, the U.S. attorney at the time, said the suspect banged on the lawmakers' front doors in the middle of the night, a targeted attack against individuals who answered the call to public service. Now, why have we not heard more about this? And why is there no comparison between this situation and Charlie Kirk's? With obviously no disrespect to the dead. And I feel bad for the family, and I pray for the family of John, or rather Mark and Melissa Hortman, who were both killed. But nobody knew who they were prior to their death. Outside of Minnesota, certainly. I would defy that no one in this listening audience, outside of perhaps people that were originally from Minnesota and were involved in Minnesota politics, would be able to tell me the name Melissa Hortman if I asked you who was the Speaker of the House in the state of Minnesota. So to suggest that this story did not carry the weight that Charlie Kirk is carrying, and that's wrong on the part of the mainstream media, is absurd. These are two very different situations. Equally tragic, awful, horrific, and whatever motivations that these individuals carried with them into these killings ought to be examined fully. But let me tell you something. Nobody's examining this killer anymore. The last thing I can find on Vance Bolter was in June. There was one article entitled, "What We Know About the Radicalization of Vance Bolter. Is he left-wing or right-wing? Depends on whom you ask," it says. Vance Bolter was charged with 2 counts of second-degree intentional murder, along with 2 counts of second-degree attempted intentional murder for the attack. He faces federal charges of stalking, murder for the alleged assassination of Hortman and her husband. According to law enforcement, Bolter allegedly visited 2 other lawmakers' homes that night, had a list of between 45 and 70 targets, mostly Democrats and abortion centers. Shortly after the attack, Bolter texted his family group chat, "Dad went to war last night," speaking of himself. He did not have a large digital footprint, did not have a clear manifesto as to his motives. Vehicle belonging to him was found with "No Kings" written on pieces of paper, but it's not clear whether he supported anti-Trump protests or planned to visit one to harm the protesters. Bolter's friends called him a Trump supporter and a Republican, but he served on the Democrat governor business workforce. Other than that, nothing. Not that it matters, because these individual cases ought to be examined individually on their own merits. What the political left is trying to obfuscate desperately is a simple and, I believe, unassailable fact that many portions of their supporters have dehumanized their political opposition to the point that they don't care about the sanctity of their lives. And I think it's as clear as can be when you examine the amount of people that are willing to go publicly online and celebrate, anonymous as they may be, celebrate the death of Charlie Kirk because they consider him a fascist. That is, I understand the whataboutism that's going on hashtag Never CNN right now, because if you force them to face the fact that a decent enough percentage of Democrat supporters are applauding and celebrating this, then you have to face the fact that the dehumanization of individuals has worked in political circles to the point that they don't value the sanctity of life anymore like they should. I think social media is a part of this. I think there are a lot of components that merit examination. The media doesn't want to talk about any of them. Sadly, we are giving a gift. I feel like we are set to give a gift to the political left here as individuals with their own agendas come forward and attempt to confuse people like you and like me on who the true culprits are without evidence. And I challenge, I was listening to Hand this morning, and I know he got a call or two from individuals that have a belief, that have bought into this belief that somehow Israel is involved. Look, I have probably not as many issues as some, but I have issues with the manner in which Israel has comported itself in the aftermath of October 7th, 2023. And I understand that some like Israel less than others and some like Israel more than me. But it is a hell of a far jump across a pretty wide chasm to suggest that because you disagree with the manner in which Israel's doing its business, that they somehow were on any level responsible for any of this. And why are you bringing any of that up to begin with? Except to fit that square peg into that round hole into your own agenda. Well, that's called making this about you. And each one of you know who I'm talking about. And if you don't, well, bully for you. You're better for it. And yes, we've invited her on the show on multiple occasions, and no, she will not come on because, yes, she considers herself too big to talk to normal people. And she hides behind that, and that's fine. 25 after the hour, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. A lot of you are sending me there's just a lot of different candlelight vigils going on, and a lot of you are sending those to me, and I'm trying to get the word out on each of those. So if you have any of those and you're sending them on the super text line, I'm trying to get to as many as I can. I know there's one in Mount Juliet this weekend. There's one in Nashville, I said tonight, right? Tonight at the Centennial Park at 7 o'clock. And then I just got this one from Hendersonville. It's on Long Hollow Pike. Help me out. Someone said, hey, Tim, I know you're listening. Fellowship tonight in Hendersonville, but then the address that you sent me is in Gallatin. Is that correct? I'm just making sure that that's correct. In honor of Charlie, a candlelight prayer and worship service tonight at 6 o'clock. They say bring your own lawn chair. It's an outdoor event. It's on Long Hollow Pike, Fireplace Fellowship in Gallatin. Is that right, Tim? Just this is the Now Generation event. It's got a number of speakers, and No, it looks like it's going to be a good event. I'll get some eyeballs on the address there. 615-737-9986 is the telephone number, 615-737-9986. You're invited to be a part of the conversation. I'm waiting on you, KM. KM says that he's going to call in because he said that he was changing the radio station because he said that my dialogue sucked. And I said, well, you're welcome to change the dialogue anytime you're ready. It's not really a dialogue. It's more of a monologue when I'm talking about myself. It can become a dialogue, and all you have to do is call us at 615-737-9986. Would love to talk to you about this matter or any other on your mind. Mike, in the spirit of dialogue, is in Old Hickory. Hello, Mike.
How you doing?
Good, Mike. Thank you.
Hey, listen, I want to remind you of something way back when, probably when you were young. We're hearing all about it's the right wing that's doing all the assassinations, killings, 527 people since 1990. I don't know who that idiot was. I can't remember any of those stories, and they won't name names or places. But I do remember a place down in Texas when Bill Clinton and Janet Reno burned down a place called the Branch Davidians. You remember that?
Yeah, Waco, Texas, sure.
Waco, Texas, and a bunch of kids were killed.
1993, if I'm not mistaken.
That wasn't right wing. That was left wing. So if we're going to start piling up bodies like the Democrats are blaming us for, maybe they better add on to that 9/11 body count of Waco, Texas, because that came from Bill Clinton and Janet Reno.
Yeah, I mean, Waco was obviously a horribly botched operation where the government overstepped its authority and overstepped in a way that led to the death of many people that didn't have to die.
Exactly.
Ruby
And
Ridge is another example of that, too, by the way.
Well, those people were living on their own land, and you may not have believed their beliefs. They had no right to go in there and burn them out, kill them, but just because.
No, and there were my understanding, and I haven't read about Waco in a long time. I haven't refreshed my memory on it, but if my memory serves me correctly, I mean, there were some legitimate concerns about what was going on inside of the Branch Davidian compound, but those concerns could have been dealt with easily without trying to overrun the compound because they found out that David Koresh and others had guns, and that was a part of the reason that they decided to go in there in the manner that they did, and they got a lot of people killed as a result.
And I agree with that, but because we didn't agree with what he was doing in there, a lot of us didn't. I didn't. But it didn't call for that kind of violence with helicopters and tanks and everything else on a compound that they own and were sitting on. And what I'm saying is that Democrats always take the extreme. They don't care if they kill people if you disagree with them. And they don't go down the path of, well, let's kind of look at this. Maybe we can get them out of there. They could have waited long enough to where that thing would never have happened. But it was Bill Clinton and Janet Reno that wanted to send a message. If you disagree with the government, if you're going to have guns and you're going to do this, this is what we're going to do. So all I'm trying to do is bring up the past, that if the Democrats are going to keep blaming us for everything, well, look who the real killers are.
Well, and the obvious difference between the example that you cite and the ones that we've cited in the past is that the government was a part of that killing, right? So thank you, Mike, for the call. I mean, it does not go without. I mean, obviously, it's duly noted. And yes, without having a full-throated discussion about Waco, Texas, I mean, clearly there were horrific mistakes that led to people dying, burning to death as a result of those mistakes made by a government that did not need to do what it did in the fashion that it did it. Although there was a standoff of, I want to say it was a long standoff prior to them going in. I don't remember how long it was. 615-737-9986. Last night, we heard this, and we played this first for you and shared it with you as the show was going off air. This was Matt Gutman last evening on ABC explaining to us that there was a lot of tenderness in this cold-blooded suspected assassin.
It is. It's heartbreaking on so many levels, Kira. Obviously, Charlie Kirk was murdered brutally in front of a crowd of thousands of people who watched him being shot through the neck and then essentially bleed out in front of him. And I think one of the things that the attorney here made a very fine point about is that a lot of these charges, 7 charges, were aggravated because children were present. Children witnessed this. Children were put in harm's way. And that was something that obviously is aggravating here, and that's one of the reasons that the suspect, in addition to the alleged murder being political in nature, is facing the death penalty. They're going for the death penalty. And on the other hand, there is this duality of a portrait of a very human person, a very human experience from this entire family. As you mentioned it, the mother who essentially discovered that it was her son who had done this, the kid who had got a 34 out of 36 on the ACTs, who had a 4.0, who got a full ride to college here, that kid was the one who allegedly perpetrated. She saw those pictures and said, identified him essentially. And then those text messages, and I don't think I've ever experienced a press conference in which we've read text messages that are so fulsome, so robust, so apparently, allegedly self-incriminating, and yet on the other hand, so touching. Right?
Fulsome, robust, self-incriminating, and touching, Matt Gutman of ABC News says. Ugh.
With the suspect reaching out to his roommate, who is allegedly his boyfriend, who we understand, identified as male at birth, now identifies.
Hey, would you please stop? So he identified as male at birth. Is that what you just said? I don't mean to be caught up in the small stuff here, but listen to this garbage.
Male at birth, now
identified as male at birth, but now identifies as female. No, he didn't. He was born a male. He's a male. No child identifies as anything after birth. They are what they are. You are born a male. You are biologically a male. Why would you say it this way, Matt Gutman? Are you suggesting that upon birth, the child left the vaginal canal, was born, we cleaned the baby up, cut the umbilical cord, smacked him on the rear end, wah, wah, okay, what sex do you want to be? Oh, I want to be a little boy. Okay, you're a little boy. No, you looked down and you saw the penis. Oh, that was a big clue that you were dealing with a little boy. No, and no identification on the part of the little kid needed. Good gracious.
That was a weird piece of reporting right there.
Well, he's apologizing today. The reason I bring this back up is because Matt Gutman has rightly so taken a lot of heat over this weird reporting. One more time.
So fulsome, so robust, so apparently, allegedly self-incriminating, and yet on the other hand, so touching. Right, with the suspect reaching out to his roommate, who is allegedly his boyfriend, who we understand, identified as male at birth, now identifies as female. And the terminology he used, he was trying to protect him. He kept calling him my love. My reason for doing this is to protect you.
Okay, this is what I wanted to key in on. He quoted something that was never said in the texts. His justification is, I was just trying to create this dichotomy between the cold-blooded assassin that he's accused of being and how. But in doing so, you said something that was never said in the text. He never said, I'm doing this to protect you. He used if we are to believe the text, he used the term my love, but he never said what you said he said, dude. So why are you making up quotes?
Identified as male at birth, now identifies as female. And the terminology he used, he was trying to protect him. He kept calling him my love. My reason for doing this is to protect you.
He's saying that as a quote. That was not a quote.
But also asking him to delete the messages and not speak to law enforcement. So there's this heartbreaking duality that we're seeing very tragically.
Heartbreaking duality that we're seeing. Well, and that's Matt Gutman that you just watched there on television if you're watching on Talk TV and you heard on your radios. But Gutman is now speaking back out saying Yesterday, I tried to underscore the jarring contrast between this cold-blooded assassin of Charlie Kirk, a man who dedicated his life to public dialogue, and the personal disturbing texts. Oh, now they're disturbing texts. Last night, you called them touching.
Touching.
You called them heartbreaking. You made quotes up about them, but today they're disturbing. Read aloud by the Utah County attorney at the press conference. I deeply regret that my words did not make that clear, but let there be zero doubt, I unequivocally condemn this horrific crime and the pain it caused Charlie Kirk's family, those who were forced to witness it at UVU, and the millions of people he inspired. Maybe Matt Gutman spend a little more time talking about the family man that Charlie Kirk was. Maybe spend a little time talking about how loving he was to his wife and his young children. Maybe spend a moment or two to disabuse leftists of the notion that Charlie Kirk engaged in hateful rhetoric or hate speech of any sort. I defy you, if you are on the political left, to point to me an example of Charlie Kirk using a racial slur or a slur of any kind, because he didn't use that type of language. I wish that I could say that I'd never used a slur against people, not of a racial nature, not since my teenage years. I admit that I did so in my teenage years, and I'm embarrassed to say that, but it is true. It is a fact that I cannot escape. At the same time, Charlie Kirk did not engage in that type of language. He engaged in debate. I similarly defy you, if you are of the political left, to tell me how Charlie Kirk was a fascist or how he engaged in hate speech anyway. Hate speech? Really? No. But no, the television networks have no interest in humanizing Charlie Kirk. They just have an interest in humanizing the cold-blooded SOB that killed him 1 week ago today. 51 after the hour. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Somebody wrote in that Matt Gutman sounds like Robert Downey Jr.'s character in Natural Born Killers, gushing over the love between the two natural born killers, and I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Who knows what will happen to Matt Gutman? Jimmy Kimmel is under fire from the FCC. When we were talking about FCC the other day, and we noted that there are certain things that we can do, certain things that we can't do because we are publicly broadcast. We're broadcast across the airwaves. Traditional mainstream media networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC primarily, those three are still governed by the FCC as well. And the head of the FCC, Brendan Carr, was on with Benny Johnson. And Brendan Carr said, look, because apparently Jimmy Kimmel, and I missed this when it happened. I don't follow Jimmy Kimmel. I don't watch Jimmy Kimmel. I don't give a crap about Jimmy Kimmel. But apparently Kimmel referred to this individual that was accused of the shooting as a MAGA guy, one of their own. And Brendan Carr said to Benny Johnson on his podcast that they are threatening immediate action against Jimmy Kimmel, ABC, and Disney for, quote, deliberately misleading the public by claiming Charlie Kirk's assassin was a MAGA conservative. Brendan Carr called Kimmel's malicious lies, quote, sick, and said they should result in Kimmel's immediate suspension and may lead to ABC losing its broadcast license. Carr confirmed the agency has a, quote, strong case to hold Kimmel, ABC, and Disney accountable for spreading dangerous, politically motivated misinformation. A very, very serious issue right now for Disney. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to take action on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead. They have a license granted to us by the FCC, or granted to them by the FCC, and it comes with an obligation to operate in public interest. In other words, there are calls to be for Kimmel to be fired, but at very least, he owes an apology to the individuals involved. All right, it's 5 o'clock. Super Talk 99.7. I expect to hear the music. Sometimes when I don't hear the music, I don't know when to shut up, Jackson.
Well, we so rarely reach this segment because you go late in the previous segment that I forget to play it a lot of times.
See, you're just hurt people, and I called you a whiny big baby, and now you're trying to hurt me back. I know. I understand that. That's fine. Big old whiny baby. I got dogs to keep. I can't let you buy me food, Matt. Wasn't that the conversation we just? I just tried to buy him food, y'all. I said, we need to hang out. We need to talk. Yeah, I got dogs.
I said, let's do it next week when I don't have dogs to worry about.
Okay, that's probably what you said.
That's a direct quote.
All I heard was,
Go to the news.
You know what? I'm going to go to the news. And I was going to do it without you telling me to do it.
Well, now you did it with me telling you to do it.
I suppose so. Ken Weaver's like, can I just do the news? Yes, sir, you may. On Super Talk 99.7 WTN.